3 months ago, I harvested just over 14 pounds of fresh ginger from a single container that took up about 4 square feet on my back patio. That is more ginger than most people buy in an entire year, and I grew it from a $2 piece of ginger root I picked up at the grocery store. Now, if you have ever tried growing ginger the conventional way, planting a chunk in the ground and waiting 8 to 10 months for a harvest, you know how frustrating that timeline can be. Most folks in temperate climates never even attempt it because they assume ginger is strictly a tropical crop that needs nearly a year of frost-free growing conditions. I thought the same thing for a long time. Then, about 4 seasons ago, I started experimenting with a simple container method that uses bottom heat, a specific planting technique, and one key environmental trick that cuts the growing timeline down to roughly 90 days. The results honestly reset everything I thought I knew about growing ginger at home. Today, I am going to walk you through exactly how I do it, from selecting the right ginger root at the store all the way through harvest. And stay with me to the end because I am going to share a little-known trick involving the timing of your harvest that actually triples the pungency and flavor of your ginger compared to what you buy in stores. For years, I treated ginger the way most gardening books told me to. I would buy a piece of organic ginger root in early spring, bury it a couple inches deep in a garden bed, water it occasionally, and then wonder why nothing much happened until late fall, if anything happened at all. Some years I got a few knobby fingers of ginger that barely added up to what I started with. Other years the rhizomes just rotted in the ground before they ever sprouted. If you have tried this and been disappointed, you are not alone. I was right there with you, convinced that ginger just was not meant for my backyard. Then I started researching how commercial ginger farmers in Australia and Hawaii actually manage their crops, and I noticed something that completely changed my approach. They do not just stick ginger in the dirt and hope for the best. They control soil temperature, moisture levels, and light exposure with real precision. Once I adapted those commercial principles to a simple home container setup, everything clicked. Here is the core concept that makes this whole method work, and it comes down to basic rhizome biology. Ginger is not like a tomato or a pepper, where the plant grows up and produces fruit. Ginger grows outward underground. The part we eat is actually a modified stem called a rhizome, and it multiplies horizontally through the soil. The speed at which that rhizome expands is almost entirely controlled by soil temperature. Research out of the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences shows that ginger rhizome growth accelerates dramatically when soil temperatures stay consistently between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Below 70 degrees, growth slows to almost nothing. Above 90, the plant stresses and stops expanding. So the entire game with ginger comes down to keeping that root zone in the sweet spot. And once you understand that one principle, every other decision, the container, the soil mix, the watering schedule, all of it makes perfect sense. Let me walk you through exactly how to set this up. The first thing you need is the right ginger to plant, and this is where a lot of people unknowingly set themselves up for failure. You want to start with a fresh, firm piece of ginger root that has visible growth buds on it. These buds look like small, slightly pointed nubs on the surface of the rhizome, sometimes with a greenish or pinkish tint. You will find them at the tips of each finger of the ginger hand. Now, here's what matters. Do not buy ginger from a conventional grocery store that has been treated with growth inhibitor. Many commercial ginger suppliers spray their roots with a chemical that prevents sprouting, so the ginger lasts longer on the shelf. Instead, look for organic ginger at your local natural food store or farmer's market. Organic ginger is not treated with growth inhibitors, so it will sprout reliably. I typically buy a piece that weighs about 6 to 8 ounces with at least 5 or 6 healthy-looking buds. That single piece will fill a large container in 3 months. Once you have your ginger, cut it into sections that each have at least 2 buds using a clean, sharp knife. Let those cut pieces sit on your counter for 24 to 48 hours so the cut surfaces can dry and callus over. This prevents rot once they go into the soil, the same principle as letting a seed potato heal before planting. Now let me show you the container and soil setup, and this is where things start to diverge from the conventional approach. Most guides will tell you to plant ginger in a standard pot with regular potting soil. What I have found works dramatically better is a wide, shallow container rather than a deep one. Remember, ginger grows horizontally, not vertically. I use a plastic storage tote, roughly 24 inches long by 16 inches wide and only about 12 inches deep. Drill 6 to 8 drainage holes in the bottom, each about a 1/4 inch wide. For the soil mix, you want something that holds moisture but drains fast, because ginger loves consistent moisture but will rot in standing water. My mix is roughly 60% high-quality potting soil, 20% perlite, and 20% aged compost. Mix that up thoroughly in a wheelbarrow or large bucket before filling your container. Fill the container with about 4 inches of this mix, then lay your ginger pieces flat on the surface with the buds pointing upward, spaced about 4 to 6 inches apart. Cover them with another 2 inches of the soil mix so they are sitting about 2 inches below the surface. Give the whole container a thorough watering until water runs freely out the bottom. The soil should feel like a wrung-out sponge, moist throughout, but never soggy. Here is where the growing really begins, and where this method separates itself from the traditional approach. The conventional way is to plant your ginger and just let outdoor temperatures dictate the pace. What I have found works dramatically better is using a seedling heat mat underneath your container for the first 4 to 6 weeks. You can find these at any garden center for around $20 to $30. Place the heat mat on a flat surface, set your container directly on top of it, and use a thermostat probe inserted into the soil to maintain a consistent 78 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit at the root zone. This single addition is what cuts your growing time nearly in half. Without it, soil temperatures in most backyards fluctuate too much, especially at night, and the ginger just sits there doing very little. With the mat, you will start to see green shoots emerging from the soil surface within 7 to 14 days. Once those shoots are up and about 4 inches tall, you know your ginger is actively growing, and the rhizomes are expanding underneath. Now, what I am showing you today is just one piece of a much bigger system I have put together for growing food from kitchen scraps. If you are enjoying this and want to take it further, I put everything I know into a guide called the 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. It is a 171-page handbook that covers 31 different crops you can regrow from scraps, including a $10 starter kit guide, so you do not waste money on supplies you do not need, plus complete troubleshooting for every crop. You can grab it for $17 at backyardbuddybooks.com, or just scan the QR code on screen right now, or check the link in the description. All right, let us keep going. Now that your ginger has sprouted, let me walk you through the ongoing care that keeps those rhizomes expanding rapidly. Moisture management is critical. Ginger wants consistently moist soil, but the #1 killer of container ginger is overwatering. Here's my approach. I water every 2 to 3 days during warm weather, and I always check the soil first by pushing my finger about an inch below the surface. If it still feels moist, I wait another day. If it feels dry at that depth, I water thoroughly. As a rule, the soil should never dry out completely, but it should also never feel waterlogged. For feeding, I apply a balanced liquid fertilizer, something like a 10-10-10 or a fish and seaweed emulsion, once every 2 weeks, starting about 3 weeks after the shoots emerge. Ginger is a moderate feeder, so you do not need to go heavy on the nutrients. A half-strength application every 2 weeks is plenty. This next part is where most people go wrong with ginger, and that is light. Ginger does not want full blazing sun. In its natural habitat, ginger grows on the forest floor under a canopy of taller plants. It thrives in bright, indirect light or filtered sunlight. If you put your container in direct afternoon sun, especially in zones 8 through 10, where summer temperatures regularly hit the mid-90s, the leaves will scorch and the plant will redirect its energy into survival rather than rhizome growth. What works best is a spot that gets morning sun, maybe 3 to 4 hours of direct light, and then dappled shade for the rest of the day. A covered porch, a spot under a deciduous tree, or even a north-facing wall that gets reflected light are all excellent locations. If you are in zones 3 through 6 where summers are cooler, you can afford a bit more direct sun, maybe 5 to 6 hours, because the ambient temperature is not pushing the plant into heat stress. Now let me talk about the expansion technique that really maximizes your harvest. About 6 weeks after planting, you will notice the soil surface starting to crack slightly as the rhizomes push outward. This is your signal to add another 2 inches of your soil mix on top, a process similar to hilling potatoes. This gives the expanding rhizomes more room to grow laterally without being exposed to light, which can toughen them and turn them green. I do this twice during the growing cycle, once around week 6 and again around week 10, adding about 2 inches of soil each time. This is why you leave room at the top of your container when you first plant. By the end of the growing period, your soil level will be about 8 to 10 inches deep, and underneath that surface, the ginger will have formed an interconnected network of plump, juicy rhizomes. For those of you in cooler climates, zones 3 through 7, let me share how to make this work. Start your ginger indoors in late February or early March using the heat mat method I described. Keep it inside near a bright window or under a simple shop light for the first 8 weeks. Once nighttime temperatures outside stay consistently above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, you can move the container outdoors to its filtered light location. Then, bring it back inside if temperatures threaten to drop below 55 degrees in the fall. The beauty of the container method is portability. You are not locked into your outdoor season. Let me walk you through a few patterns I see that tend to hold people back with ginger. The first pattern is planting too deep. I did this myself for years, burying ginger 4 or 5 inches down thinking it needed to be protected. What happens is the rhizome exhausts its energy pushing a shoot to the surface and has little left for horizontal expansion. 2 inches of cover is all you need. The second pattern is letting the soil dry out between waterings, treating ginger the way you might treat a succulent or even a tomato. Ginger evolved in tropical monsoon regions where the soil stays consistently moist for months at a time. Letting it go through wet and dry cycles stresses the plant and dramatically slows growth. The third pattern is waiting too long to harvest. A lot of guides tell you to wait 8 to 10 months, and if you are growing in the ground without temperature control, that might be accurate. But with the container and heat mat method, your ginger is ready in about 12 to 14 weeks. Waiting longer than that does not give you bigger rhizomes. It actually causes them to become more fibrous and tough as the plant starts shifting energy toward long-term storage rather than fresh growth. Now let me pay off that trick I mentioned at the beginning about tripling the flavor of your homegrown ginger. Here's what I discovered after testing this over 3 seasons. When your ginger hits the 12 to 14 week mark, the rhizomes are what commercial growers call baby ginger. The skin is thin and papery, almost translucent, with a pinkish blush at the tips. At this stage, the concentration of gingerol, which is the compound responsible for ginger's heat and flavor, is at its peak. I tested this side by side with store-bought mature ginger in recipes, and the difference is remarkable. Baby ginger has a sharper, brighter, more complex flavor because it has not yet converted its gingerols into the mellower compounds that develop during long storage. To harvest, just tip the whole container on its side, gently pull apart the soil, and lift out the entire rhizome mass. You will be shocked at how much is in there. The first time I did this, I just stood there grinning because the root mass had expanded to fill nearly the entire container from that single piece of grocery store ginger. Everything I walked you through today, the container setup, the heat mat technique, the hilling process, these are exactly the kinds of practical, money-saving methods I cover across dozens of crops in the 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. That guide walks you through 31 different foods you can regrow from scraps, with a $10 starter kit list, 0 waste kitchen strategies, and full troubleshooting for every single crop. It is 171 pages of the same kind of step-by-step detail you got today, all for $17. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit backyardbuddybooks.com. The link is right there in the description as well. So next time you are at the grocery store and you pick up a piece of fresh ginger, grab an extra one. For a couple of dollars and about 3 months of easy container care, you can grow more ginger than you will use in a year. I would love to hear how your ginger turns out, so drop a comment below and let me know when you get started. Happy growing, folks.